Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today? Fantastic. Welcome to the Warrant Officer Professional Panel. They've got a great program set up for you. We got some very esteemed panelist members. I'm Chief Lucy. I'll be the moderator for today. First off, a couple rules of engagement. We will be allowing the individual panelists to introduce themselves as well as say a few things that's learning on their brains or that they really want to say about the topic. Then we'll ask them some questions, and then from there, we'll move on to audience questions. Our panel members are Reba Wallner, Signal Warrant Officer, Career Program Manager, Brandy Wyatt, EW, Cyber Warrant Officer, Career Program Manager, Chief Paul Sankey, Signal School Technical Director, Josiah Johnstone, Strategic Plans and Integration Branch, CCOE, and Bill Howard, Cyber School Technical Director. Their full bios can be found on the AFCEA webpage, and you can look at it at any time. As the Army progresses through the Army Transformation Initiative, Army commands and structures are combining, condensing, and changing. The Army's premier technical experts must evolve to enable Army transformation, force design updates, operational changes, new technologies, and the way we use concurrent technologies are driving changes in the Signal and Cyber Warrant Officer assignments, accessions, skill requirements, and education. These changes affect all three components. In this panel, Cyber Center of Excellence Senior Warrant Officers discuss ongoing and upcoming initiatives that will impact the Signal and Cyber Warrant Officer careers. Start off with Chief Wallner.
Good afternoon. So I am the Signal proponent and currently responsible for accessions and structure for the Signal Regiment and all warrant officers. So first thing I want to talk about is one of the major initiatives that I've kind of brought to the table and am leaning on my fellow CW5s and senior W4s across the Signal Regiment to work, and that is reviewing our Signal Warrant Officer authorizations. So as we grew from 2002 to 2015, the reality is we had several new formations come to be, and we kind of started building our structure with like formations receiving like structure, like authorizations. And the reality is we've got a number of our billets out there that we aren't quite sure that we've got the skill set right. During my time background as a HRC career manager, I received a number of phone calls from individuals in assignments that they did not feel that their skill set, their specific skill set was required. And so since that time, been kind of coming up with a list of those types of units. And so we are actively making a concerted effort to identify what billets we might have that could be better utilized with an enlisted skill set or with a different warrant officer skill set. We're trying to identify them as non-critical based upon the warrant officer MOS skill set. Now, Chief Lucy mentioned ATI. We have got a lot of known structure changes in the works, and we've got some that we are forecasting. So, biggest one that has already been approved, the Division Signal Battalion. So when the Division Signal Battalion got approved, the initial poll was that the 255 November and the 255 Sierra, currently assigned to BCTs, would get pulled up to the Division Signal Battalion. We then identified some additional requirements down at the brigade level that need to remain. So that includes transport network architecture, data radios in applications, along with a multitude of data requirements that will require organic expertise within those BCTs. So since the initial pitch for the Division Signal Battalion, we have since added to the authorization that a 255 November needs to remain within the BCT, as well as the 255 Alpha to address those topics and maintain that organic expertise. Additionally, we've been already received last week alone. I had at least 5 different force design update requirements to review for all of the MDTFs and their, the major commands that they will be merging with based upon the ATI order. All of this is being reviewed for what authorization Signal Warrant Officers will remain, what we have as a requirement. Additionally, there's going to be, with these changes, with these, with ATI, with C2 Fix, with Next Gen C2, there's going to be a shift in role. So 255 alphas, prior to 1 October of 2024, they were information systems technicians. Today, they are data operations warrant officers. We'll hear a little bit more about that from our schoolhouse, but what does that mean? How do we assess? So that goes into my next topic, accessions. How are we assessing our next generation of warrant officers? I will say that has actually not changed. The reality is we need to be looking at not the person who can technically manage the mission today. Yes, that's always beneficial, but we need to be able to identify those who have the adaptability, the understanding, the foundational understanding that can be built upon, so as changes come, they can be flexible, they can adjust, they can meet those mission requirements. As our roles are prepping to shift a little bit, we need to be looking for individuals with that same mindset, the ability to fit the requirement, not necessarily only the scope that they think that they are ready for today. With that, pending any questions, I will turn it over to CW4 Wyatt with Cyber.
Thank you. Mic check. All right, we're good. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to introduce myself, cyber proponent. My bio says Signal. I am not Signal. I have not V-tipped, and I do not plan to. I had to throw a joke out there. We got to lighten it up. Okay. Couple topics I'm going to cover. Majority are similar to Chief Wallner. Obviously, we're going through the same thing from a proponent standpoint right now. Top 3, unprecedented growth for cyber holistically. When I say that, I mean 170 Alpha, Bravo, and Delta. Accessions for Alpha, Bravo, and Delta, and then pay grade imbalances, similar to what she mentioned, trying to balance out our average grade distribution matrix. If I get any of my stats wrong, my boss is Sean Beauvais. He's been there for 10 years. I have not. He's the one that produced or provided me with these stats. So from FY15 to FY30, Cyber Branch holistically has seen a 225% increase. Why does that matter? When we hear Army, we hear no growth Army. The Army is not growing, cyber is growing. Just keep that in the back of your noggin. This includes the remaining build-outs of the NDTFs, 3, 4, and 5, the TIADs, 3 TIADs, I think they're pilots, counter small UAS batteries, 12th Cyber Warfare Battalion, as we know, is still standing up based off the ATI XOR that came out, and our red teams, and there's 5 red teams. I have the specifics if anyone has a question on who's going where. Accessions, next topic. Me and my 170 Bravos often disagree with this, but I think most of them have came to term. Over 50% of the 170 Bravo and Alpha and Delta accessions come from outside MOSs, not non-feeders. My boss calls it finding diamonds in the rough. I know we have a couple of warrants that we've recently brought over that bring some tactical experience that unfortunately our 17 Echoes, 17 Charlies are not getting from their AIT, which I think that's a work in progress as well. Yep, okay. We do assess recruiting. It's probably going to become more challenging for all 3 of our MOSs, not only with the robotics coming online, which I think we're probably going to lose some of our warrants to that. AI, ML, which I know those are still in the works, but they are on deck, and I know our recruiting pool is definitely going to shrink. Hopefully we get some funding to continue to do face-to-face engagements, because I will say overall accessions this last year, since the funding was cut, we've lacked the face-to-face engagements. It's been more challenging getting packets in for us. Pay grade imbalances, we continue to collaborate with operational force, trying to refine pay grade structure. We did some initial restructuring with our W5s for 170 Alpha, 170 Bravo. Both of those have semi-proven successful. We're still in the works of that. Unfortunately, it does take a couple of years. I think I've been working on it for 2. We're about 75% of the way there. And we are going to continue to do the same across all 3 MOSs for W1 all the way up to W5. Ultimately ensuring right pay grade at the right location, obviously with operational input. Pending any questions, I'll pass it over to the boss.
Thanks, Brandy. Everybody hear me? All right, so bear with me. I've been in the job for all of about 1 day, so I will do my best. What I do want to talk about is, and everybody knows about Warrant Officer PME modernization. I want to go over that a little bit more and kind of go over some of the ramifications for Signal and how we're handling that at the schoolhouse. Probably the best way to do this is with a chart. Dave, if you could throw that chart up there. Next slide. Okay, so there you see the legacy, and then you see the modernized PME. So number one, Fort Rucker has modernized every single course that they have there. So all of that Common Core that's at Fort Rucker now, that has been totally revamped. So those won't be the same courses. And then for every one of those Common Core courses, there will be a technical course back at the Signal School. That's with the exception of the Warrant Officer Master course. So what we've pretty done, we've implemented WOIC, Warrant Officer Intermediate course. To do that, we've kind of pulled some out of the old WOAC and created some new content in there to try to focus that more on CW2s working at division and above. Likewise, with WOAC, that's been revamped to kind of focus on CW3s at core and above. So that kind of fills that gap in that we used to have between the basic course and the advanced course. It could have been up to 7 years without ever coming back to the schoolhouse. Some of the questions that have come out of this is, okay, well, what course do I go to? I've already been to WOAC, right? Well, the legacy WOAC is pretty much what we're calling equivalent to WOIC. So if you are WOAC complete, that means that you can go to the new modernized WOAC. Yeah, so, and it works on down the line like that, right? Because it's different, the reason is it's different content. Because the focus of the old WOAC was on a younger warrant officer. The focus of the new WOAC is on later in their career. So it follows suit. If you've been to Warrant Officer ILE, then your WOAC, new WOAC complete, and you can go to the Warrant Officer Senior course. So there's one little issue with this. Our old ILE follow-on course is now the Warrant Officer Senior course, follow-on course. So we're still kind of trying to figure out what to do with that. But Fort Rucker still wants you to go back to Fort Rucker and get that updated content for the Warrant Officer Senior course. So that's kind of how it works. There's been a lot of questions about that. If you are a CW3, you do not have to go to the ILE, to WOIC. You can go straight to the new Warrant Officer Advanced course. If you are a CW2 promotable, you have to go to ILE. So you might want to wait till you get promoted, just saying. Okay, so really what this has done, kind of the benefits to this, is that, you know, it fills the gap between WOBIC and WOAC. We talked about preparing the CW2s for division and the CW3s for core and above. What we're trying to do is modernize the way that we update training, because in the past it's been a 3-year cycle where you run CTSSBs and POI updates, and we end up teaching legacy kit, right? So what we started doing now is pulling in lessons learned from the field, including C2 Fix and Next Gen C2 exercises, to bring that in faster and update that on the fly. So we're kind of breaking the old mold that TRADOC had, and TRADOC supports that. TRADOC has been supporting that for about 3 years now. So some of the challenges that we're seeing, number one, no additional funding or resources. So what we're having to do to run this first WOIC course is we're going to have to non-conduct a WOAC in FY26 to conduct the first 2 WOIC courses in FY26, because we don't have additional instructors, we don't have additional funding. This is additional time away from duty station. It was already hard to get your commanders to let you go to PME. Now we've got an additional course that you have to go to. We actually have several, because there are new Common Core courses at Fort Rucker that you have to go to. WOAC was previously only here. Now you have to go there as well. There's additional TDY costs for the units. There's some confusion as we transition between the old and the new models. There's still some questions around that. Number one, you know, what differentiates the old WOAC and the new WOAC on my FCP? HRC hasn't answered that yet. Really, you know, there's going to be some questions, there's going to be some growing pains, but in the end, it's going to be better, you know, as we start moving towards modernization and try to get the right training in there. So one of the other things we're doing is called, has anybody ever heard of the Signal Mobile Advanced Readiness Training? So this is a new program that's been in the works for a couple of years now. Not you, Chris. What that program does is it assesses what kit an organization has, comes back, develops training to teach how to integrate, troubleshoot, identify problems in that kit, and then get that training back out to the organization. And that's where I'm going to pass this over to CW3 Johnstone, so he can talk a little bit on that. He's been engrossed in that for the past year or so, right?
6 months.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, I'm CW3 Josiah Johnstone. I've been on the SMART team for about 6 months now. A lot of work had been done prior to me joining the team. A lot of data collection as far as observing and analyzing units in the field with operating C2 Fix equipment. So right now, SMART is C2 Fix focused, right? The idea of it is to bridge knowledge gaps between schoolhouse, WIN-T, and see what needs to be done so that operators know how to operate and troubleshoot C2 Fix equipment effectively out in the field. So I've gone to a number of exercises out in the field and observed a lot of common discrepancies. So I've gone to OLE, JRTC, JPMRC, and we are all seeing things from the same side picture. Operators having trouble isolating, articulating, and remediating faults out in the field, specifically with the layers 1 through 3 of the OSI model. So what we do is we analyze these units, we take these discrepancies, we bring them back to the SMART program here at Signal School headquarters, and we turn that into course curriculum. So our roadmap right now is looking like once this curriculum is finalized, which is it's going to be finalized this month, and then we're rolling out to 25 ID next month, and then follow on from there to 82nd Airborne, and then to 101st, and then 310 Mountain Division. From there, we're going to pivot from C2 Fix into Next Gen C2 and start redeveloping our course curriculum so that it can bridge those learning gaps for Next Gen C2. And so we'll be more diversified to address those problems between C2 Fix and Next Gen C2. So to boil it all down, some of the overall observations we had was that operators had a lack of understanding of C2 Fix signal flow, an inability to navigate each device within their local area, a lack of understanding on how to effectively monitor devices via SNMP, bandwidth and failover, an inability to effectively articulate and localize faults in terms of layers 1 through 3, failure to effectively conduct site surveys prior to deploying PLEO, and then improper knowledge management, knowing where to locate and deploy baselines and backups, right? So a lot of times operators will be out in the field, an piece of equipment will fail, a VM, for instance, and the operators won't know where to locate those baselines or how to implement them. So overall, we observed soldiers can operate equipment learned through NetNef, but do not know how to troubleshoot. That concludes my portion at SMART, and I'll be followed by CW4 Howard.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm CW4 Bill Howard. I'm at the technical director at the cyber school. And similar to the signal school, we are also going through the Warrant Officer PME modernization. To kind of give everybody, we're on the same operating background, right? The Warrant Officer Career College took their path of modernizing their PME, right? They took most of the material in WOSI and renamed it and pushed it down into what's going to become the Warrant Officer Senior course. They took most of the material that was in the intermediate level education course and pushed it down into the Warrant Officer Advanced course. And then the DL portion that used to be prerequisite to the Warrant Officer Advanced course, they configured that and added some material. And that became the new Warrant Officer Intermediate course at Rucker, okay? The cyber school, you heard how the signal school built out their intermediate course, advanced course follow-on, and we share the Warrant Officer Senior course follow-on. The cyber school, we maintained our WOBIC. We maintained our Warrant Officer Advanced course. It's now just going to be reflagged the Warrant Officer Advanced course follow-on because it's still appropriate material across the Alpha, Bravo, and Delta MOSs for a CW3. And then the Warrant Officer Intermediate level education, what used to be WOLI follow-on, is now going to be the Warrant Officer Senior course follow-on. Again, it's still appropriate for CW4. But what we did was create an entirely new course, the Warrant Officer Intermediate course, and shoehorn it in there at the CW2 level, which is what was directed to us. And so it's entirely new material, appropriate for a CW2 for the Alpha, Bravo, and Delta. And so what that is creating is kind of a naming conflict between the Warrant Officer Career College and the cyber school, right? Because we've gotten a lot of questions. I've gotten a lot of questions. I'm sure Signal School has fielded several questions too. Hey, I've just completed WOAC. What am I going to come to in the next fiscal year? We'll have some questions later on to kind of tease out some of these vignettes. This Warrant Officer PME modernization is also going to really impact the Compos 2 and 3, right? Your guiding document, and I'm not a Compo 2 and 3, so if I speak incorrectly, you can throw stuff at me later on, just not right now. AR 135, 155, I think, is a document that tells you what you need to do in order to get promoted, right? So when I'm looking at that, it says, as of January 19, a CW2 must complete all phases of WOAC in order to be eligible to be promoted to CW3, okay? And the same thing, a CW3 must complete all intermediate level educations, what used to be WOLI and WOLI follow-on, in order to be eligible to be promoted to CW4, right? And then there's some other requirements for a CW4 to go to CW5. Nothing in that document as of today, right? I looked this morning, there hasn't been any updates. It talks about the intermediate course, the Warrant Officer Advanced course follow-on, and the Warrant Officer Senior course. What also is going to impact Compo 2 and 3 is the intermediate course, advanced course, and senior course are rank dependent, right? You cannot attend the intermediate course unless you're CW2. You cannot attend the Warrant Officer Advanced course unless you're promotable or already a CW3. You cannot attend the Warrant Officer Senior course unless you're a CW4. And so for Compos 2 and 3, who need those particular courses in order to attain that rank, this creates kind of a dilemma, right? And so
it creates the dilemma, the amount of seats aren't tracked correctly. We've been the problem historically, right? So if you don't track enough seats for Compos 2 and 3, that's definitely.
yeah, I mean, yes, the,
Languages can be complete. So they wrote it in Western Gnostic, but the generalized languages can't be complete for that grade.
yeah,
So it goes across the board.
yep,
Problem we have with this one is, if we lack the proper allocations, right, as a school for resources, and I know we're tracking on time, you're taking substantial hits with shrimp funding that I cannot be, we are organized PLWA, right, which I should. Right?
Yeah.
So my question for the directors is, I need efficiency. I need you to explore all the mechanisms to build in GQR. I'm coming with that, because I'm sure that they have my interest.
no, that's fine. No, I mean, this is what this
We're
forum is
definitely
for,
going to hit it.
right? And I knew there were, not being a Compos 2 and 3, speaking about Compo 2 and 3, this is what I'm witnessing at my schoolhouse, right? This is how this Warrant Officer PME modernization impacts the cyber National Guard and reserves. Again, and I've already had to generate an ETP for a National Guard member, right? That was in ILE and was like, hey, I'm not going to be able to get to the ILE follow-on course until it becomes the Warrant Officer Senior course follow-on. And I'm a CW3. So that come FY26, that's going to prevent me rank and prerequisites from even attending that course, right? So these are some of the impacts that we are wrestling with at both schools, okay? That's the end of my initial introduction, and I'll pass it off to Dave.
Yeah, there's going to be questions, you know that. All right, we're going to move on to a few questions coming from me because I've got some, and then we'll get to yours and several others because I know y'all are waiting for that. Chief Wyatt, with the unit and command changes occurring through ATI, do you see any potential gaps that need to be overcome?
Why do you make me go first? No, so we spoke about it earlier, Dave, and I think the biggest thing is from a proponent standpoint, we worry about the spaces, not the faces. And with the mandated reduction in force via ATI XORD, we're just going to have to do more with less, right? I think it's more of a change in mindset. One thing I will be proud, or I am proud of, and Master Sergeant Redmond can back me up on this, is the Mobile Brigade combat teams increased heavily on 15 and 17 series, so maybe we be thankful for that. And then from an NBC multi-domain command perspective, there will be a reduction in force, and we're just going to have to figure it out. I'm not one to speak on equipment, so we'll save that for Colonel Gorman. Over.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Johnstone, what is the difference between net and F? And you're going to have to help me out. What was that acronym? SMART T, SMART, S-SMART, what?
So SMART, it's a Signal Mobile Advanced Readiness Training. And the difference between SMART and net and F is that we've noticed that during a net and F, soldiers are assigned to specific tracks based on their MOS. Like you'll get the radio track, you'll get the baseband track, you'll get that. Well, SMART is meant to be a more holistic approach to where it's 25 series agnostic. The soldier will come to the training. It's meant to be more advanced, Foundry-like. We call it tech light because we know we can't create a SME in 10 days, right? SMART is only 10 days long. We're only approved for 10 days, 80 hours of training. But we're going to expose them to the entire C2 Fix architecture so that they know how to execute their PACE properly. Because what we've noticed is that soldiers, they like to push the easy button when it comes to transmission, when it comes to utilizing their MBK or Pelio, right? Those are the easy buttons. But how are you executing that TSM mesh? How are you utilizing Atom? How are you implementing your radios into your overall PACE plan? So SMART is meant to bridge that knowledge gap, and then also kind of educate them so that they're able to isolate, articulate, and remediate the fault. From what we've observed is that soldiers, they know how to turn the equipment on, but when it comes to troubleshooting, they're really lacking. They don't know the signal flow. They can't even articulate what's going on. So we want to educate them so that they're able to isolate, understand their local area, the devices within their local area, articulate, be able to understand, be able to express what's going on in their devices. But if they don't know how to remediate themselves, at least they'll be able to articulate it to their warrant officer who's already overloaded so that we can save as much time when it comes to remediating those problems.
Appreciate that, Chief. Chief Wallner, with the different MOSs, transformation in contact, ATI, what emerging skill sets are impacting accessions, or are they?
Great question. So several different emerging technologies and skill sets are being introduced. Chief Wyatt mentioned a few of them. We've got robotics coming out, 390, 390 Alpha. We've got AI in the works, likely to come out in the near future, 490 Alpha. And then we've also, or 490 Bravo, excuse me. Then we've also got 280 Alpha has already been approved, and that's software. Oh, wait, there's one more. Air Force has just reestablished the warrant officer cohort within the Air Force, and we've had several folks already express interest in that. So the reality is, one, we've got current serving warrant officers inquiring about other opportunities, and so that is something that branch is having to work their own processes to identify. HRC branch is having to identify their own processes for the potential for release. Given our current shortages, it's going to be slim opportunities. Additionally, our friends here in cyber have been affecting our sessions for quite some time, because the reality is we've got but at least somewhat similar skill sets and somewhat similar backgrounds. And so the reality is we are all assessing from a very similar pool. And it does mean that I'm getting packets that have 170 as well as 255 MOSs on it. She is getting the same. And we're going to see that continue to expand with multiple MOSs, multiple requests. And it's going to affect timing of packet submission, because when they're boarding at different timeframes, your preferred MOS ought to be the one that you're boarding for first. It's going to affect just the personnel, which skill set they get. But the reality is we're all kind of fishing from that same pond.
And real quick, I know you told me not to bring it up, but you know how I am. So another thing that we've seen recently too, with the decrease in the aviation, I don't know if it was Apache pilots, whatever, everybody's getting downgraded, right? So we are getting flooded with individuals that were set MOS prior to, or set enlisted MOS prior to going aviation, coming back through the ringer. So we're about to get flooded. It could bridge some gaps in year groups, but otherwise we got a lot going on.
Does getting flooded mean that you're going to be looking at one of those other MOSs and not Signal?
No, she more means that, we've got signal folks who went aviator, and so those guys are already reaching out to me, trying to come back to signal because they need a home. Aviation is more than accepting of saying, we appreciate your service, have a nice day. They don't want to do it, but the reality is their numbers don't support. And if they don't find a home on their own, they get a handshake and shown the door. And when you're a 15-year service member, that's a really tough pill to swallow. So definitely more so what the flooded comment meant is those branches that were the initial home for those individuals that did not start as aviators are likely to get those requests.
Appreciate that, Chief. Chief Sankey, speaking of new MOSs, how's a signal school preparing the 255 Alpha for their new roles as data operations warrant officers?
So really, actually, those roles are really still kind of developing. In reality, 255 Alphas in a lot of cases are still doing what they've always done in the field. But as we go through transformation and contact, C2 fix, next gen C2, we're kind of evaluating what the skills they need to know to make sure that the right data gets to the right place at the right time. The kind of the starting point that we started with is they're getting data literacy training for data professionals. And for people that have already been through the lower level training and want to get that training, that's available to anybody. So if you're CW4, CW5, you can still go and take that data literacy training. But that training is going to continue to develop as we figure out what those specific skills are that they need to know.
Appreciate that, Chief. Chief Howard, now I know I'm late on this. I just completed WAC last December. Does that mean I got to go to the new WAC?
This is a question I get quite a lot, so I wanted to be able to address it to the room. Last October and then this January, I gave a couple of WOPDs. One to Compo 1 in October, and then one to Compos 2 and 3 in January. And at that time, in both of those instances, I stated, hey, if you're WOAC complete, then you will not have to go to WOAC. I also said at that time, this information is true as of the time of that briefing. So, to be honest, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, and then we'll have to wait and see what comes out in actual documentation, okay? If you are CW3 and you've completed your technical warrant officer advanced track, right? That means in FY26 you now have completed WOAC follow-on. In order to be PME complete and to receive the military education level Q identifier, which is a prerequisite for the warrant officer senior course, you may indeed have to go back and do the warrant officer advanced course that is now taught at Rucker. Now, many of you might say, well, I've already got WOAC on my STP, and that is true. And I went back just in preparation for because I answer this question quite often. I went back and looked at my STP, and on my STP it says Cyber Tech Warrant Officer Advanced Course, right? And I'm sure yours says something similar to whatever your MOS. I imagine that the Warrant Officer Advanced Course that you're going to complete at Rucker will probably say something to the effect of Common Core Warrant Officer Advanced Course. And the material that you'll teach, that you will be introduced to there, will not be redundant or training that you've already completed. It will be what used to be ILE with some additions, so it'll still be rank appropriate and new material. Now, the follow-on question that I usually get is, well, will I have to go and complete the warrant officer follow-on course again? No, not in cyber. I'm not going to ask you to come back and do a 19-week and 4-day training that you've already completed. That's a waste of resources, time, and money. So we will make sure that gets annotated correctly on your STP. But to prepare you, I'll give you the worst case scenario, and then we can hope for the best. Worst case scenario, you finish WOAC and the traditional WOAC, chances are really good you're going to have to go do the FY26 Rucker Warrant Officer Advanced Course in order to be PME complete at CW3.
And just to reiterate, on the signal side, that's not the case. You have to go through both phases again. because the content is very different. And again, that is it. That is a place in time right now. We'll see how this develops, but things change. But as of right now, if you have your WOAC, that means you are WOAC complete, and you can now go to the new WOAC.
Appreciate that, Chiefs. Now to the fun part. Questions? Oh, I'll get to you next.
All right, so I know we just talked about the WOAC for the cyber school, but some clarification for those of us who are CW2s, that will be WOAC complete 2 days before that FY26 comes in. Because WOIC is a requirement to be complete before making 3, but I won't be WOAC Rucker complete unless I'm a 3. What does that translate to as far as getting promoted and getting looked at for 3?
All right, so from the cyber school, again, because the two schools are trying to attack it the same, but we're not 100% in sync. If you're a CW2 and you just completed WOAC, again, which will be the WOAC follow-on course starting in FY26. I want to say that you will have to go do now the new WOAC, and you'll be good to go. You will not, on the cyber school, we're gonna lean forward on, you've already completed WOAC, so I'm not gonna ask you to go back and do WOWIC or the WOWIC follow-on. You've completed training, you've completed training at the CW3 level, all right? So I'm also, again, not gonna ask you to go back and do the WOAC follow-on again. So WOAC, how I'm reading it and how we're interpreting it at the cyber school, in your particular instance, because everybody has a unique instance, I would say you're going to your next course is the Warrant Officer Advanced course at Rucker, and you should be PME complete for CW3.
So to eliminate confusion, the WOAC that we're talking about now, the new WOAC is basically the old staff course. It would have been easier to eliminate confusion if we'd have named it instead of WOAC to something totally different, and then that way everybody would understand. So the WOAC that we're talking about is the traditional WOAC that everybody's going through now is your technical phase. The new WOAC is just going to be a staff level course, so you're prepared for that staff level work. That's all it is. So just get it out of your mind that, hey, I've completed an advanced course before, I'm having to do an advanced course again. No, this is just the advanced level of your professional development to make your staff officer.
Hey gang, Andy Note, former ARCG Career Management Officer for Army Reserve Warrant Officers. The way we've been briefing it to our population for the past however long since this started is stop thinking about the names. Just think of it as PME 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, if we ever get around to that. It's not about the title of the course, it's about the MEL code. If you already have MEL code Lima, you have MEL code Lima. You are complete at that PME level. It doesn't matter that they renamed another course to be another thing. So whatever you've completed before FY26 kicks in, you're good. There are going to be some people who have completed like one half of, say, ILE. They completed their ILE follow-on and they haven't completed their Common Core. They're going to have to go to Rucker and complete the Common Core, or vice versa. You have to complete the half that you're missing, right, if you bridge that gap. So just think of it as PME 1, 2, 3, and 4. Whatever you've completed, move on to the next number. Should be pretty easy. Does that make sense? Agree? Concur? So if you look at your 1059, the one that is your completion, it should have the MEL code there. It's also in your STP. So go to IPSE and look at your STP. And if you still can't find it, then contact your talent manager if you're active, your career manager if you're reserve, your state if you're guard. Does that Does that make sense? Fair enough?
Yeah, also, just refer to 350-1. It'll have the MEO code that you're supposed to receive at each level of PME. Yes, and I'm gonna probably snatch that explanation. I like it a lot.
And just go to the USAR Warrant Officer Teams channel. We've been publishing it there like every month for the past year, at least.
Yeah.
Oh.
So another fun one is the master course, right? So I just finished a senior course in June, and what we learned was that they've repurposed PCC, and that's going to be considered the master course for fives that get selected in nominative roles. Really curious from the seniors in here how they selected PCC, because it seems like the wrong course for us and what we're going to be expected to do at the 5 level, at the GO level.
So I argued that point when I was at CCOE as a CCWO, and they were talking about this master course. I asked the question, why are you sending us to that level of PME when we're going to be working for GOs? That's not the level of PME, but that's what they've decided on, and I think it was probably a resourcing thing. I'm not sure. That's something we'd have to get with CAC on and ask them about.
Does that mean we got to go to it after we get out of WILE? Or if we've already been working for the GOs?
So we covered a lot of W2 and above. For fresh W1s going to Wobic. I wouldn't, possibly. So I know there was a CTSSB that decided the curriculum recently, but it seems like a few things we've been holding on to for a very long time now that stop radio-controlled IEDs are still inside the curriculum. Is there a look to further fix that to match the rest of the W2 and above curriculum?
You want me to get that? I can. Okay.
So I hope that you're referring to the W2 curriculum for 170 Bravo, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we did have a CTSSB happen, I think, 23? Yeah, a couple years ago, almost it's exactly to the month. We are in the process of updating that PME, and it's a slow process. What is also exacerbating that process is the fact that the 290 MOS, which became the 170 Bravo MOS, that PME hadn't been updated in a long time. And so we're basically starting from scratch. And that is whereas the alphas, for instance, we've had consecutive CTSSBs every 3 years. And so we're not starting from scratch. And so the Bravos, unfortunately, we're getting there. It's just a slow process. We're working on it. I agree with you, and trust me, my 170 Bravo instructors give me an earful weekly that we're not teaching we don't yet have the appropriate instruction or POI for the 170 Bravos yet. But that's not that we're not sitting on our hands. We're working on it. And if I will put this out to you, if you are 170 Bravo and you were stationed at Fort Gordon and you have spare cycles, feel free to contact CW4 Jason Perdue, standing in the back, who is the senior 170 Bravo. He would love to use your input to help with his POI updates. We're going to have to lean on the 170 Bravo population writ large to help bridge this large gap in the POI transition from 290 to a more modern day 170 Bravo. So, does that answer your question?
I'm going to add on real quick. We're having another CTSSB next year. I'm not sure if that's going to be beneficial or not, since we haven't even had the time to update current POI. The other thing we're struggling with, and all my Bravos know this, is the instructor contact hours have not been updated because our POI hasn't been written and adjudicated by TRADOC. Hence the reason all of our excess instructor billets are sitting not in actual billets. But until we get the POI updated, which has to be done by the instructors, we have 3. We can't get that adjudicated through TRADOC, so we can't get additional instructors. And then we have, for instance, right now, 3 courses going on at once, 3 instructors, 3 classes, even with contractors, green suiters have to be in class with the contractor. So that kind of held our movement on the POI. Now with the CTSSB next year in August, I'm not sure if it's going to reduce POI for WOBC. The intent is to have that, I think, POI completed effective 1 October of next year, and then we'll work on the additional. Just want to throw that out there. So come to the CTSSB.
Hey, thank you. I guess this is more for Chief Sankey. Since cyber, we worked it over the last 3 years. You guys shortened the curriculum, able to get it down so that it really reduces the friction for Compo 2 and 3. But for the signal side of the house, what efforts are going to be made? General Stan, back when he was at CCOE, he had directed that we explore moving some of the modalities to some type of or format of distance learning or virtual learning so that we can enable Compo 2 and 3 as well as, because we get restrictions a lot, and our statutory requirements really put a hindrance on the availability of our service members. So I'll give you a good example. I got a W1 who's in OBC. He comes in phases, right? Because the length of the course, he's going on a mobilization, but because he wasn't in an ICS1 unit, his statutory days are utilized or just maxed out. So return on investment for the unit that's deploying currently, we lose him through the build up, the ramp up, and all of a sudden he's our guy who's never touched the equipment. So we have stagnation building into our portfolio. So I'm just asking if you're going to explore any type of virtual learning over.
So about 3 years ago, I guess, we were directed to reduce distance learning. That was part of the whole back and forth with PME modernization. At the same time, we were directed to implement WOIC, right? So now the rumblings are that we're being directed to reduce warrant officer PME. So what does that mean, right? So there's going to have to be some give as far as the distance learning goes. Now, there's another problem with the distance learning is the number of hours that reservist and guard can do distance learning. So there's going to be a balance there as far as your resident training and your distance learning. It may end up, some of that ends up being, self-driven. So we're going to have to see where this goes as far as this, reduction in warrant officer PME goes. But I absolutely agree. We do need to try to find ways that we can make it easier on the guard and reserve. Yeah.
Yeah, we're tracking and we work very close with the proponents and with the ARPAs to get those packets in. And yes, we could optimize some of that, but the language is so specific with the LOEs that my service members may have, superior industry expertise in it. But when you add tactical language into the LOE, it makes it difficult to give them the credit for that because you sit in a tactical environment, right? And so it's a challenge for us.
Other questions? This many warrant officers in a room, and we ain't got a bunch more questions. There we go. Yeah, what's for dinner?
So for the 170 Bravo, I know that we've been talking for years about technical certifications. I know as a previous signaleer, technical certifications are part of the process. I know alphas have technical certifications. What, if any, discussions have there been in the 170 Bravo community about technical certifications such as getting certified in radars? Is there any funding for things like that to happen or be a part of the schoolhouse?
Is there funding? Maybe. But what has not been brought to me from the cadre and what we did not see coming out of that CTSSB from 2 years ago was anything indicating what would be the appropriate industry certifications that would be appropriate for 170 Bravos. Now, if they exist, and it would be awesome if they do, because that would help us with the POI and maybe with some constructive credit, for the upcoming CTSSB, make sure it gets in the language as a requirement. And then I'll have to pass it to Brandy for further explanation.
No, concur. We're good. So you're talking specifically like coming out of the schoolhouse with certification or outside?
Coming out of the schoolhouse, like,
Okay.
examples, GTRI, other certifications.
I gotcha. So our wonderful instructors a couple weeks ago wrote a pretty in-depth paper with a bluff up front, trying to highlight some of those topics to the commandant. And we got a new CWAB in, Matt Engel, who received that paper in his inbox last week to try and advocate for that on our behalf. But I do concur with Bill for the CTSSB. We focus more on making that a priority, vice just talking about it. And we all know the funding for us is not, you got me. But hey, I think I might be ending up going to schoolhouse to replace Bill if I'm fortunate enough. So first Bravo in the schoolhouse, game on. Gotcha.
So you mentioned GTRI, and we were actually trying to partner with GTRI to come down and actually build some, help us build actual technical POI, because we had a couple folks that were up there that were doing their, they were doing their assignment there. We're set up. We've already got it on the books, if you will, prepped and ready. Now we just need the funding. And so it's not that we don't have it. We're just now waiting on the money to come around. So it's an idea that we have that's just shelved until funding comes around again. And then we'll bring it off the shelf, because from what I'm hearing from my Bravos, and I was in on that meeting with them, they have some really fantastic training. And if we are able to get that, then I'll tell you, you 170 Bravos have better bring your A game, because that's some pretty extensive training coming out of that. And that's not a challenge. I'm just saying, hey, we're looking at getting you some technical training, because I don't know if you guys know this, but EW is a popular word in the Army nowadays. So.
So I got my first question. I'll pass it to you after I do that. So I grabbed the mic early. Chief Kamsey from First Corps G6. So I have first MDTF at JBLM and third half and half between us. You talked about ATI and the MDTF structure, which of course is changing to what's it called? Multi-domain command, of course, Pacific and the one in Europe. What are you looking to do with, or what's your guys' thoughts? And this goes across both from the signal perspective and the 170 perspective of, I heard there were the 170s doing a CPT-like mission at the MDTFs and aligns structurally somehow to our cyber. And then two, what's the depth of 255 Novembers in MDTFs? Because I have a whole slew of them in my third and first, and I'm trying to gauge on, should I keep growing them or should I move them to better postured locations to, one, meet the intent? Because I got some in space company and other directors underneath that. So both the 170s for the CPT structure, if that's true, and then 255 November is what you guys' thoughts on that?
Hey, sir, so I'll be honest, with the multi-domain command, FDUs that we have seen, task and purpose for the warrant officers has not been clearly depicted or identified. I think the CPT structure is just something they're floating around, and it's similar to organizations like not only the NDTFs prior to the merger, but with the 11th Cyber Warfare Battalion and the 12th, still trying to figure things out. What equipment goes where, and then what is task and purpose? And I know that Dave has worked previously with DECO in the NDTF formations, but now that they're merging, hasn't been technically released.
That's definitely still being looked at.
All right, for the 255 Novembers, that is definitely, so I will tell you, having received feedback from 255 Novembers in the MDTFs, that space formation, mixed feedback, whether it's really a necessary. It goes back to what I brought up already about us reviewing our authorizations. When I'm getting feedback that I don't know why this authorization exists, doesn't mean it's not critical. Doesn't mean that there isn't a valid requirement. It might mean that they're being misutilized, and that's part of the homework that we're doing. Now, when we're talking multi-domain commands, I've seen Japan, I've seen PAC, I've seen Europe. They all look different, and that's acceptable. They've got different missions. PAC, we were on multiple calls with them last week, multiple, because what we were reviewing was not what they were projecting or requesting. and different COAs. So the reality is there's still a lot more work to be done specifically with PAC. I think it would be valuable for you to be in contact with USERPAC and the team that is working their request, because the document that I had received had a NetOps section that consisted of two 25 Alpha 04s, one 25 Alpha 03, a 25 Hotel E7, a 25 Echo E7, and I think even a 25 Delta. I did not say 26 Alpha. I did not say 255 November. Why they need 3 25 Alphas and 0 technicians blew my mind. And when I brought it up to them, they were like, Chief, that's not our request. They're like, it's a document that's made its way to us, so there's a concern and a gap there.
So that's good because we did do the working group and there are 2 courses of action moving forward. So that's neither course of action. So I'm wondering what you got versus what we worked on.
Us
That
too.
could be different, but that doesn't mean
Absolutely.
A or B.
Absolutely, but that's exactly why it comes through us. It's exactly why I give it my thorough attention to ensure I'm helping make sure that the request that gets pushed forward for signature does not miss a required skill set.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll fix that.
Last question.
Good afternoon. Recently retired. I'm Jeremy Cosner. So lots of cyber talk on the signal side. So for the Novembers, how much have we taken seriously about integrating more man-A trading for our OBC, especially with C2 Fix, Next-Gen C2? Like, you know, I've got somewhere between 700 to 1,000 radios as a young like W1 on top of my like WinT gear. And then for the alphas, how much deeper down the rabbit hole are we going with Linux and just becoming more fluent in mission command software in general? Because at the C2 Fix exercises last year, my alphas did great and wonderful work, but they're building VMs and then stepping away from it when the hard work of like doing all the peering between AFA TADs and AMDs and D6 and so on and so forth, like my signaleers were nowhere to be found. And my alphas could like do some really good work in that space if we train them appropriately. So just curious of how we're addressing that.
So with SMART, the program has kind of an evolution. It plans on evolving, right? The demand, well, right now we're trying to meet is going out to these units who've been fielded C2 Fix equipment and trying to bridge that knowledge gap that they have there. In the long run, what we're actually aiming to do is to replace the current SDMG course, right? And modernize that course with C2 Fix next-gen C2 equipment. Now that's going to take some time, it's going to take funding, but eventually we want to get to the point to where we stand it up on Fort Eisenhower, and then we're addressing those training gaps with our WOBC, our BOLIC, SCCC, WOAC communities. Specifically, those actually go into those types of units.
So,
All right, go ahead.
One additional note, you know, the Commandant has been very adamant about trying to bring in experts who have been in those formations, going through C2 Fix, going through Next Gen C2, specifically to have people who are standing on the platform able to share their experience, able to share their knowledge, recognizing we definitely have a pretty substantial gap right now with what people will be doing when they arrive on ground. She has been afforded the opportunity to Commandant-approved POI changes as opposed to the typical in the past process that it takes to go all the way up through TRADOC. So she is looking into that. Chris, I don't know if you'd like to speak a little bit more on that just based off your more direct interaction with them.
The key thing is, the last 2 years at the Great Command Corps, the lieutenant colonels and colonels going through there have expressed a desire for a warrant to get back to the category of space. And the Commandant has said that we will support that through SMART delivering us mission curriculum to India, as well as the next TSSB. It is mandated that be explored as critical task for I started out with an agnostic, don't say November, say 255.
Well, I want to thank our panel members and everybody for coming out. They have already volunteered to be standing outside to answer your questions for until 2300. Is that what you said? 2300 tonight? Okay. But if we could please give them a round of applause.